Our project is on characterizing the network level behavior in phishing emails. My name is Leanne.
My name is Elisa.
My name is Ifan.
Phishing attacks are one of the most common and pervasive forms of cyber attacks. And a typical phishing attack is looking to trick a targeted individual into revealing personal information about themselves. So that can be anything from passwords, credit card numbers, social security numbers. Past studies have primarily focused on phishing attacks from a behavioral perspective of the attackers, as well as on the content of the phishing emails themselves. And there has also been prior research into the network level behavior of attacks, but they have focused on just general spam attacks. Because phishing attacks are constantly evolving, it's become an arms race between both the attacker and those that are trying to stop these types of attacks. And so the level of sophistication of phishing attacks is constantly growing. So our project is motivated behind this idea that that network level features are harder to manipulate, and so therefore, by identifying key features of them in phishing attacks, we might be able to build a detection system that's more robust over the long term.
About the data and the method, our email dataset is collected by Barracuda Networks in January 2020. An example about our data is shown in the graph. For each email, we have a unique ID and we know when the email are sent. And then the headers field contains the full path of the emails, and it shows how the email go from the sender server to the receiver server. Each record shows the email received by a server X and then go to server Y. And ideally, we know the name of each of the servers and also the IP address. To analyze the IP addresses in the email's path, we conduct several exclusions on email filters, such as we exclude the private IPs and local IP addresses, and also the Outlook servers IP addresses. Besides the email servers, also do some checks on the SPF, DKIM signature, and so the mark signature. These informations are also used to characterize the emails.
One of the features that we're trying to characterize is where these attacks are coming from. So the first element that we use to determine where attacks are coming from is through parsing the array of IP addresses that an email goes through. Firstly, we plotted the proportion of phishing and clean emails received over the course of the month as a function of IP address space. And we found that most IP address ranges that originate a large amount of phishing email also originate a large amount of clean email. However, there are a couple ranges that have significantly more malicious than legitimate email. This characteristic suggests that it may be possible to use IP address ranges to distinguish phishing email from clean email, or at least give a better picture of if there are certain IP ranges that may originate more phishing email than usual.
Another area that we focused on for where phishing attacks are coming from is from a geolocation perspective. So we mapped IPs to a geolocation database. We used two different databases, both IPMap and MaxMind. And we looked initially at where how many distinct countries any given email goes through. From the graph, we found that clean emails tend to go through fewer distinct countries. So for two distinct countries in a single email header in the clean data set, we found that that covers over 80% of the data set versus for the phishing data set, only 60% had only two distinct countries in the email header. So this indicates that phishing emails tend to go through more countries than clean emails.
Finally, we tried to determine when these phishing attacks occur. We found that most clean emails sent follow a predictable diurnal pattern, while malicious emails are usually sent in large anomalous bursts or marked a significant deviation from a certain IP sender's usual email sending pattern. So if you look at figure 4, which is a time series sending pattern graph for a Twitter IP, you can see that at the end of the month, the Twitter IP started sending malicious emails, which can be visually determined that it deviates from its usual clean sending pattern. So from this, we can try to use various time series and seasonal trend decomposition methods and anomaly detection in order to determine time periods where IP may be more likely to be sending phishing emails. In conclusion, we have identified key network level features that can be used in a classifier in the long run to detect phishing emails better than existing models are able to. We also have ongoing work in other areas, such as expanding the geolocation analysis to look at patterns in countries that are used in phishing attacks.